I made a video about Luther's invention of a modern conception of religion, um, I think a week or so ago. So I just want to revisit that, and I'm going to read some pertinent passages from Tawney's Religion and the Rise of Capitalism. Um, Before we start, I just want to make two disclaimers. The first is that my interest in Luther's thought is not from a religious perspective. It's from the perspective of history of ideas. So I'm not talking about Lutheranism or the historical, development of Luther's religious ideas as practiced by many Lutherans today. The second thing is I'm also not interested in Luther's ideas per se, because my interest is more in using those ideas to understand the present. So I'm more interested in understanding capitalism and how religious movements today are incorporated into supporting capitalism. So anyway, so the first thing, let's read it, and then a theme will emerge, hopefully. Luther's revolt against authority, that is the authority of the Catholic Church, was an attack not on its rigor, but on its laxity and its corruption. That's how it started, anyway. His individualism was not the greed of the plutocrat, eager to snatch from the weakness of public authority an opportunity for presumed gain or personal gain, So Luther's revolt against authority was an attack not on its rigor but on its laxity and its corruption. His individualism was not the greed of the plutocrat eager to snatch from the weakness of public authority an opportunity for personal gain. It was the ingenious enthusiasm of the anarchist who hungers for a society in which order and fraternity will reign without the tedious, stale, forbidding ways of custom, law, and statute, because they well up in all their native purity from the heart. So I think this passage contains a lot of important ideas which form the basis of Luther's, a conception of religion which emerged from Luther's thought. His ideas were developed by others, so I'm not claiming that. And these ideas are present in Luther's, and they were developed some by Luther and some by other people. So obviously Luther's movement started with as the movement against corruption in the Catholic Church, and it developed into a critique of church's authority. But I think in this process, his thought developed into something more profound and something which goes beyond that initial movement of reform within church or reforming the church. And he ended up not only inventing a new form of Christianity, which is a fairly non-controversial claim, but also developing or at least providing seed for the development of a totally new conception of religion. And some of the seeds of that conceptions are described in this paragraph. That's why I want to start with it and focus. So there's no doubt about individualism. And that individualism first emerged from his opposition to the institution of the Catholic Church, and freedom of Christian was part of that. So that was freedom from the presumably corrupt church. But his individualism also developed into a much more unique conception of individualism. It's more than what we normally understand by individualism. So we'll come back to. What about anarchism? This is anarchism in the sense that the emphasis of freedom. Freedom of the individual from the church, and in theory at least freedom to develop a unique and personal relationship with God, basically unmediated by, at least in principle, unmediated by any external authorities or media, including other individuals. So that's the starting point of anarchism, but it's much more. This anarchism obviously is a rejection of any institutions, custom, law, and statute not only as mediation in the practice of spirituality, but also as expressions of it. So you didn't need institution, you didn't need customs, you didn't need or you shouldn't need law, statute, neither as mediation to the expression of your spirituality, nor as an expression of your religiosity and your spirituality. So all these institutions which Catholic Church had built, like institutions of the church and its related institution, customs, social customs, any custom related to religious authorities and legal and statute, are rejected both as mediations, as media, but also as an expressions of your spirituality and religiosity. And basically then you are rejecting is also community, because community cannot be just sustained by pure formless or contentless spirituality. It needs and develops customs, law, statute to sustain itself. And so you basically reject community as well. And then you, as we'll see, you end up rejecting all sort of externality as expression as well as media of your sustaining and expressing your spirituality and religiosity. So religion and spirituality become individual affair in a very narrow sense, in the sense that individual as inner being. So it is not even your body, because your body is still an externality, because and interacts with other individuals and nature, but yourself as it related to your own inner self. So it's more like something like an inner relation of yourself with self in its feelings or its feelings, its inner experience, without any reference to any externality, any community, any custom, any law, in terms of media or in terms of expression, even without reference to your own body, logically speaking anyway. And at least two or three things seems to anchor this sort of conception. I think one is obviously a conception of purity. Hyper idealized conception of purity, such that it actually is not found anywhere. Anywhere in the world. anywhere external to you, even not in your body. So every expression, even the most perfect expression, is going to be impure because the ideal of extreme hyperpurity is such that by definition anything which is outside your innermost depth of your innermost self, that's impure. So that's the first conception. So the idea of the extreme purity, I think later some Protestants were called Puritans. So, but this idea of purity, I mean, the most extreme. So anything you do externally, anything, any mediation, is just impure by definition. And we'll see, I think it will come more clearly in certain other passages we will read. This idea of extreme purity is joined with the idea of spontaneity. And this is the idea of extreme spontaneity as well. It's the idea because this means the rejection of anything which is imposed from or comes from outside. The rejection of institution and customs and law, for example, comes from this idea. So what you have is the idea of religion and idea of spirituality, which is extreme interiority, and it rejects the mediation and expression in terms of any externality, in terms of institutions. So it basically rejects community if these ideas are taken to their logical conclusion. But it is important to note that when he's rejecting community and law and customs and institution and statute, they are only those which are sanctioned by or which are established by religion or the church in that country. So obviously the community must exist, laws must exist, but they would all be devoid of religious intervention. They would be absolutely secular. So purging all religion from externality or spirituality from externality gives absolute power to secularism. And the sole custodian becomes of all the externality becomes the secular authorities without any check from religious authorities or religious spiritual authorities, because spirituality has gone back to inside your heart. It's not even on your body. And although Christianity has been secular in one form or another from the start, like at least from starting from Paul or whatever, But this is totally new conception of secularism as well, because Catholic Church, even though it accepted the division of labor, it has, it had institution, religion, educational institutions, social institution. It guarded the markets as well as society and the secular leadership as well to some extent. But this is totally new conception of religion as well as a new conception of secularism. So I think we'll stop here, and next time we'll go to the second point. I think I'll need a few videos, 2 or 3 at least, to finish this off. Thank you.